Welcome, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. Welcome to this webinar where we will have the chance to present to you the key insights of a recent report that the International Energy Agency published on clean energy innovation policies in emerging and developing economies. My name is Amalia Pizarro, and I am one of the lead authors of the report. This webinar is a part of a series hosted by Mission Innovation called MI Think Tank. Mission Innovation is an intergovernmental initiative that fosters cooperation around the world on clean energy technologies. MI Think Tank events enable knowledge sharing and dissemination on high impact clean energy R&D topics among the MI community and beyond. You can find more information about future AI and MI events on the respective web page. And today's webinar will present the report I mentioned before that was launched in early October in Brazil at the Mission Innovation Ministerial meeting in Iguazu. This report on clean energy innovation policies in emerging and developing economies is available on our website. This report is the outcome of a partnership or a joint project between the IEA, the Indian Institute for Technology in Delhi, and a group of experts from around the world who contribute case studies from their countries. And we are delighted to have the chance and to share with you the key insights from all these experts during this webinar. The topic of energy technology innovation, and particularly in emerging market and developing economies, is one on which the IEA has been building up a work program. Innovation is now a global effort, and many governments in the developing world have high ambitions on tackling climate change, but also, while they do so, becoming clean energy technology hubs. However, these countries are building up their innovation ecosystems in different and unique ways compared to advanced economies. This report explores some of these differences and highlights both key similarities and unique challenges that are faced by emerging countries. To start this event, we will have three sets of introductory remarks from the International Solar Alliance, Mission Innovation, and the International Energy Agency. I'm very glad to welcome our first speaker, Ajay Mathur, who is a world expert on today's topic. Since 2021, he has been serving as Director General of the International Solar Alliance. Before that, he was Director General of the Energy and Resource Institute in New Delhi and Director General of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency in India's government. We are very lucky to have such a distinct guest to open today's event.
Thank you very much. Amelia, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the introduction. I thank Simon, Peter, Ambuj, and all the other colleagues from Mission Innovation who have made this possible. I will speak very briefly today, but what I want to focus on are three basic points. The first is that the demand for products, particularly in renewable energy and energy efficiency, are different in different countries. And what I'd like to do is to focus on the four archetypes of countries that we believe work for solar energy. The second issue that I want to discuss is that the key issue in these in promoting innovation for these projects in emerging and developing countries is public policy on renewables and energy efficiency. And therefore, if you have a forward-looking public policy which looks at goals and targets for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years hence, then that helps in innovation occurring. And I'll focus on the kinds of startups that this kind of ecosystem has enabled. So as I said, these are the key areas. The first thing that we note is that as far as renewable energy, as far as solar energy is concerned, we started looking at different countries and what is it that they could do with solar energy. And we found that there were at least four archetypes of countries. The first are the developed countries where the per capita energy consumption is more or less constant. It can change a little bit, but it's more or less constant. And therefore, they can talk of increasing the solar amount during the day. And during the night, the existing capacity, whatever is the existing capacity, gas or nuclear or hydro, can meet the need. In other words, they can reduce their emissions by focusing on the addition of solar energy, providing electricity during the day when it is the cheapest form of electricity that occurs in most geographies, including most developed countries. The second archetype is the so-called large or developing countries or emerging economies. Here, we see that the energy demand is increasing and increasing very fast. Therefore, you need additional capacity both during the day and at night. So during the day, of course, addition of new solar capacity can meet the growing demands. But what about night? So distribution companies ask me, do you mean to say that we should add solar for the day and coal for the night? That doesn't make sense. And therefore, they add coal to meet the demand at night and also during the day. In other words, battery technology is very important so that we can enable a shift to round the clock renewable energy for, or at least renewable electricity for these emerging economies. The third archetype of countries is the so-called developing countries. Here, the key issue is the incomplete grids, and therefore a very large proportion of the population that is unserved by electricity. For these countries, it becomes important that we focus on the extension of the grid, or more importantly, on solar mini grids, which can provide electricity cheaper than the extension of the grid would, especially if the grid has to be extended by more than 10 to 15 kilometers. And then the fourth archetype is the small island developing states, where the needs are very particular. For example, I went to an island, and to move to the next island, I had to go by boat. That boat was powered by diesel. Nobody was talking of the development of electric boats or solar electric boats. I believe that the IEA, the ISA, etc., need to enable the development of these boats so that they can go ahead and meet the needs of the small island countries. The small island countries, I repeat, have very particular needs. The point I want to make is that there are very different needs in different kinds of countries. How do we enable them to occur? I believe that innovation can occur if public policies are put in place which look at renewable energy and energy efficiency targets 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years in advance. At the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, we had put in targets for the perform, achieve, and trade system for heavy industry, as well as for standards and labeling of devices like air conditioners and refrigerators 2 years and 4 years in advance. That helped the companies or suppliers to those companies or even new startups carry out innovation that was needed in order to meet those targets. Very recently, last year, the International Solar Alliance identified solar startups in Africa, 20 of them. This year, it has identified 30 startups in the Asia-Pacific region, including 10 in India. We have been amazed by the versatility of the solar startups, but they all address issues relating to solar energy because of the pledges that are contained in the pledges made to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change on what countries want to achieve by 2020. In other words, these public policies contained in those pledges have helped innovation occur. I believe that public policy, forward-looking public policy, and the very different needs of different countries can help create an ecosystem in which we can look at a future which is carbon-free and meets the energy needs of all countries. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much, Eye. And now I'm also very happy to welcome today to Rosalinde van der Vries. She's director of the Clean Planet Directorate in the European Commission, Director General for Research and Innovation. And Rosalinde is also chair of the Mission Innovation Steering Committee. Thank you very, very much for being with us today, Rosalinde.
Thank you very much, Amalia, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today from across the globe. It's really an honor to welcome you to this Mission Innovation think tank event focused on clean energy innovation policies in emerging and developing economies. And it's clear that emerging and developing economies are crucial players in the global energy transition. As their energy demand grows, the pathways that they choose for development will significantly impact our progress towards net zero emissions by mid-century across the globe. By accelerating the clean energy solutions in the regions where the energy demand is rising, we reduce the overall emission footprint and also we help stabilize global energy markets. Furthermore, developing and scaling these innovations creates opportunities to make sure that we bring affordable, sustainable, and attractive energy solutions to regions that need them most. And this also drives economic growth. It has so many side benefits, improved health outcomes, increasing resilience to climate impacts, so benefits that extend well beyond national borders. So today we have a great opportunity to delve into the report findings and the case studies. And I'm convinced that this also will have a ripple effect of our efforts here. By strengthening clean energy innovation in emerging countries, we are also laying the foundation for a sustainable and prosperous future for all. So Mission Innovation and the think tank is really uniquely positioned to foster collaboration among experts, policymakers, and innovators. And this platform also encourages the sharing of practical insights and successful practices that are critical to advance a clean energy future. And it's true, as Aya said in his introductory intervention, that the different countries, of course, have different needs. But it's very important to share our insights so that we can really learn from each other and accelerate faster. So in previous think tank sessions, we also explored the role of community engagement and inclusivity in energy projects, highlighting the importance of bringing communities, innovators, and governments together to ensure a just energy transition that benefits all. Today, we are especially pleased to welcome the International Energy Agency as a valuable and long-standing collaboration partner. Along with the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, the IEA has co-developed this landmark report on clean energy innovation policies in emerging and developing countries that will be anchoring our discussions today. This report covers case studies from 11 countries and delves into unique challenges and opportunities that emerging and developing economies face in adopting and adapting cutting-edge clean energy technologies. So it's very clear that this report will be very important to spread and share the knowledge. It's also where policy becomes crucial. Effective policies can provide the financial incentives, the regulatory framework, and the research support needed to unlock the potential of clean energy innovations in these regions. Today's discussion will really help us to understand how Mission Innovation, the IEA, and also the other international partners can work together to support these economies in addressing these challenges. Mission Innovation has a strong history of fruitful collaborations, including with other organizations like IRENA. And in recent discussions with IRENA, we also explored how international-led local partnerships can drive clean energy adoption that centers communities, equity, and inclusivity in energy projects. At the Mission Innovation Ministerial Meeting in Brazil, Mission Innovation and IRENA organized a key session that focused on how Mission Innovation can support the Global South in accelerating the clean energy transition. A powerful example of this is the collaboration between the European Union and Africa, in particular through the EU-Africa Green Energy Initiatives under the European Union's Global Gateway Strategy. So the report that will be presented today shows us that successful clean energy innovation policies rest on 4 essential pillars: research push, knowledge management, market pull, and social political support. These 4 pillars are vital for emerging and developing economies to adopt and shape innovations that align with their specific needs, adding valuable insights to the global energy transition. As we engage with the report findings and insights shared today, let's focus how we can translate these ideas into actionable solutions. Let's keep in mind that communities in these regions will be instrumental in driving and benefiting from a clean energy future. So to conclude, I would like to thank you all for being here today. A particular thank you to the authors of the report, and I'm looking forward to a productive discussion to see how these insights can shape our collective world in accelerating a global clean energy transition. Thank you, and back to you, Amalia.
Thank you, Rosalinde. And finally, I'm very happy to introduce you Timur Gul, who is Chief Energy Technology Officer at the International Energy Agency.
Yes, thank you very much, Amalia. And thank you, Rosalinde, and colleagues from Mission Innovation for including this webinar in the MI Think Tank series and thereby helping it to reach a much wider audience. Thank you also to AJ Mathur for the excellent introductory remarks. Dear colleagues, from the IEA, we are very proud to have recently concluded a memorandum of understanding with the Indian Institute for Technology, Delhi, which is, as you all know, one of India's leading technical institutions. This report here is the first piece of work to be published under this particular MOU. Really big thanks here to Ambush Sagar for the excellent cooperation that we had on the report as well as the MOU, and we look forward very much to many future such collaborations on the intersection of energy technology and policy. How to make clean energy transitions truly global is a topic that has been at the heart of IEA work for some time. This report is actually coming from our IEA Clean Energy Transition Program, which is the IEA's flagship initiative to support governments to deliver sustainable energy systems that are people-centered and equitable. When it comes to technology, we've been engaging on this particular topic in different ways. First, through analytical projects such as this particular one that brings us together here today, for which we thank the European Commission for the financial support, but also by mainstreaming developing country considerations into flagship reports like our technology flagship report, Energy Technology Perspectives 2024, which we released by the end of October and which looked at how improved clean technology manufacturing competitiveness in emerging economies can be a basis for future economic growth. According to what our numbers found, these countries account for less than 5% of the global value generated by clean technology manufacturing today, but there is much more potential in Southeast Asia, for example, to produce nearly 6 million electric vehicles within the next 10 years from a couple of tens of thousands today. For Brazil, for example, in Latin America, to grow its wind blade exports by a factor of 6 relative today, and for Africa to export clean energy goods within the next couple of decades that are worth several billion US dollars. The second way we've been engaging with the topic is that we have strengthened our stakeholder engagement. In February this year, we hosted our first ever Energy Innovation Forum, for which the G7 had specifically requested that we as the IEA, in the context of the forum, showcase innovators from the developing world, and we were able to give them an opportunity to tell ministers about their world-class technologies and the challenges they face in their countries in deploying them moving forward. Following this, we from the IEA contributed to the Research and Innovation Working Group under this year's G20 presidency of Brazil, for which Brazil requested a focus on developing country needs. We delivered an energy innovation policy database and guide, technology guide, in fact, that we hope can inspire and help governments and analysts in these countries. We really thank Brazil here for the excellent collaboration and indeed support. Now, today's webinar will provide an overview of the report, and we are really delighted to have so many of the different authors from all over the world participating. For us, the interaction with these experts from a very diverse set of countries has raised our understanding of the challenges and opportunities that clean technology innovation and policy is facing in these countries. We really value this collaboration very, very much, and I know that our member governments do too. We have received excellent feedback on a session that was held in the context of our Committee on Energy Research and Technologies, where this particular report and initial findings were actually being discussed. Now, finally, we will, of course, not stop our work here. Along with our colleagues from Mission Innovation, we are keen to hear from anyone who is participating in this call today, if they would like to host a presentation of the report, suggest avenues for follow-up analysis, or anything alike. With that, thank you very much for your attention, and I pass the word back to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Timur, and to Aya and Rosalinde. And now I have the pleasure to introduce you to Ambuj Sagar, who is Deputy Director for Strategy and Planning at IIT Delhi, and to Simon Bennett, who is Energy Technology Analyst at the International Energy Agency. And they will present the key insights of the report on clean energy innovation policies in emerging economies.
Great. Thank you so much, Amalia, and I'm very, very pleased to be here to be able to share with you some of the background to the report, the findings of the report, and lead into the discussion and introduce some of the authors. I'm going to be doing this with Professor Sagar, who was my co-coordinator on putting the report together. And while I take a moment to work out how to get the slides up, I want to hold up the report, because this is a real printed book now that you can download, you can get hold of, and we're so happy to see it out in the world. So allow me to put the slides up. And what I'm going to do, because the background here has been extremely well prepared for us by the presenters so far, in terms of why this report meets a need and why it's resonated so well so far. I'm going to just explain a little bit more about what our objectives were with the specifics of the report, and maybe put up some numbers and figures that you will be able to take away and remember from it. And the first thing I wanted to show is really a chart from our net zero emissions by 2050 roadmap update that we published last year at the IEA, that I think tells you a lot of what you need to know about the difference between the emerging and developing economies and the advanced economies. So the way to interpret this chart is to see that most of the world's population on the x-axis there has extremely low penetration of solar and wind per unit of population. So that's the metric on the y-axis. In fact, almost all of the deployment so far globally is happening in those richer countries of the world, happening in the advanced economies as well as China. And so this report is, focused on that long tail of countries that have this huge opportunity to increase the deployment of clean energy, and also to become participants in clean energy supply chains and contribute to the challenges that we have around clean energy innovation. Because while we have very good technologies, very excellent clean technologies available on the market today, there is huge scope for those to be cheaper, to be, as RJ was telling us, more adapted to local contexts, and to meet some of the major emissions challenges that we have in certain sectors. In terms of how we went about putting together the report, these are the objectives that we set ourselves. And it's really about trying to get a better understanding of what's happening, because it's not enough to simply map across what's happened in advanced economy innovation ecosystems and their funding programs and their policies to the contexts in emerging and developing economies. The other thing that we wanted to do was to try and identify places in which those countries could work together. What are the similarities between them? Where are they tackling similar problems, similar issues, and where could good ideas be shared, and in a framework that is sometimes referred to as South-South cooperation. The detailed insights and recommendations Ambush will be presenting in a moment, but these are really aimed at not just governments in the countries that we spoke about in the report, but I think also the governments around the world, the international institutions and initiatives that would like to support a global approach to clean energy innovation. What are the lessons that can be learned? And also, I think there is value in the report for innovators and entrepreneurs to be able to understand what kinds of policies exist around the world, what kinds of challenges exist, and how they can promote better policies within the countries where they're operating. The report itself covers 11 different case studies. I mean, this is really a triumph as far as we're concerned, to bring together authors who are from very, very different backgrounds across these different countries in all different continents, where we have emerging and developing market contexts, and also a wide range of technologies, from nuclear through wind, bioethanol, hydrogen, efficiency, industry, geothermal, rural electrification, and especially in South Africa, the context of just energy transitions. So this variety, I think, is a great strength of the report. And if you read through it, then you will see how actually, regardless of the technology, in some cases, there are a great number of similarities between the institutions and also the ways in which the problems are being tackled. But the variety is not just on the technology front. These countries start from different places in terms of their innovation ecosystems. We've just pulled some data from the World Intellectual Property Office that shows what a wide distribution we have. Now, each grey column on this chart is a country of the world. And so you will see, in terms of the WIPO rankings, where those 11 countries sit across the countries of the world. And as I said, a great variety in the starting points. And that is also a hint that there are good opportunities for learning between them, for good practices, effective practices in one country to be shared with some of the others. But it's also a great reminder that countries that are to the further right on that chart really do have much less legacy of strong innovation ecosystems, research programs, and knowledge transfer. Before I pass over to Ambush, I would like to just highlight some of the particular challenges that we have seen in these particular innovation ecosystems, because these are really different contexts to many of the countries that the International Energy Agency has worked with over the years. And there are particular issues around constrained public budgets. There are major trade-offs between the immediate needs of the countries and their longer-term goals. There is a lack of cutting-edge research infrastructure, testing facilities. There are relatively small markets for some of the clean energy technologies that those markets do not incentivize the entrepreneurs to invest in research for future penetration. And so it's great to hear Ajay earlier talking about some of the successes that he sees in Africa and in Asia, and we'll be following up on some of those examples. But there are also weak linkages between the actors in the innovation ecosystems and few linkages into global energy technology supply chains, which means that in each of these different areas, there is work to be done, and there's a great value in being able to identify effective practice where countries can work together and perhaps leverage from the experiences and the knowledge of actors in advanced economies, especially to cooperate to overcome the barriers. So while I'm not going to read out all of them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass over to Ambush, who I hope is ready to present some of the findings from the report, and then we'll lead into the discussion. Ambush, over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you very much. And I want to kind of just get us preface my remarks by picking up again on the point that Ajay made, that you really can think about categorize countries in different ways. Different countries have different energy innovation needs, and policy is very important for all of them, which really, in a sense, very much echoes the rationale for our report, as Simon and other people have already mentioned. While the previous slide actually talked about a set of challenges, I don't want people who are listening on to lose heart. I think what you will find in the report and in the case studies is that while there are all these challenges in emerging and developing economies, there's a lot of stuff that's already going on. And each country is in its own way engaging with the clean energy transition with some fairly exciting activities and programs, all of which that have actually given us much food for thought. So I want to again echo what Simon said is please do go to the report and take a look at the case studies. I think there's a lot of rich material here. You will obviously get some feeling for that in the remarks by the authors after these few slides. Anyway, I think one of the important things is that while we're talking about the fact that countries have different energy innovation needs and different policies, there are some findings that are actually common across these countries, and I think it's important to kind of start with that. First, as I just mentioned, the reality is that just as in advanced economies, clean energy innovation has become increasingly important in the policy agenda in developing countries. Part of it is actually motivated by the need to address the climate challenge, but that's not all. There are many reasons why countries are focusing on clean energy innovation. Along with the climate challenge, people are also understanding, as was highlighted earlier, the fact that it's an economic opportunity. In many ways, it can promote economic development, but also promote energy security. And different countries have different reasons for, or different mix of reasons for focusing on clean energy innovation. But pretty much all of them are really, all of our 11 case study countries are doing that. Again, because innovation policy really plays out in a broader national context, if there is already a focus on particular issues, and especially thinking about national kind of development plans, innovation policy can build upon and, in a sense, leverage these already existing efforts to catalyze technological change. What's interesting is among these countries, you will find that there are really multiple ways to set innovation in motion. Different configurations of state and private sector, different role of international partners, different role of knowledge entities. So you find different countries really are, in a sense, taking very different pathways, and that's not surprising. I think the slide that Simon had put up, showing where different countries are in their innovation trajectory, obviously suggests that different countries will be taking different pathways. What's important also to recognize is that institutional history within the country is extremely important in directing what policy choices are. In other words, it's very difficult to start with a completely clean sheet approach. One has to have a sense, if one is thinking about how to engage in designing policy for clean energy innovation in these countries, you do need to keep in mind the institutional history that exists. You really have to work in harmony with the existing policy landscape. And it's actually particularly important for, as I'll get to later, for international partners who want to support clean energy innovation in emerging and developing economies. Of course, all countries have some existing technical expertise in different ways, regardless of where they are in the innovation, on the innovation index performance. And this technical expertise can very much play a role in providing a springboard for energy innovation activities. Kazakhstan, for example, and you may hear that from our colleagues, its plans are to promote areas that require build on their already existing skills in the oil and gas sector and think about how to leverage them, for example, for sustainable liquid fuels, which obviously makes total sense when you think about this. Lastly, all of these countries do have limited resources, and therefore all of them have actually really been fairly creative in thinking about how to make the most of these limited resources. And more than anything else, that actually requires some sense of prioritization and thinking about where is it that you would actually focus your efforts to get a maximum bang for the buck. Unfortunately, and that's really the last point here, that while these countries have put in place some kind of policy goals and activities to support those goals, energy innovation activities support those goals, they really have very few well-established and comparable processes for evaluating outcomes. And of course, as all of us who actually might think about innovation and public policy should understand that that's a really important point, in that we really have to make sure that we put in place these kind of processes in order to understand how we are doing and how to do better. I mean, in the end, in innovation, there is no single way of doing things. And so the key issue is really learning from your experiences and learning how to do well. Can we go to the next slide, please, Simon? And I know I'm running a bit slow, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. I think those were really the common key findings from the case studies. Of course, those lead to some insights for domestic decision makers. And I think the first point is also something that Ajay had mentioned very clearly in his remarks. You cannot overstate the importance of fostering predictable and durable domestic demand. And that really requires public policy, because fundamentally, especially in an area such as this, which is a new technology that's competing with existing technologies, public policy has to play a really key important role in both creating markets for these new technologies and helping support those markets scale up. Now, given the fact that most of these countries do not have an extensive legacy, it actually allows for opportunity in creative policy, as you will hear from many of the remarks and you will find in the case studies. The case studies also show that you don't really need very large R&D budgets. You do need some money, but it doesn't have to be an enormous amount of money in order to actually get going in this space. But what you can really benefit is from networks, from learning and sharing, so that you're, in a sense, understanding how you're doing and try to figure out how to go along in a better way. International engagement has played an important role in many of these cases. And I think it's a really important lesson here that, therefore, if we are thinking about international entities are thinking about how to support the global clean energy transition, in which these emerging and developing economies play a key role, then those players can play a very important role in helping building up and strengthening these domestic energy innovation systems. Domestically, there's a really important case for, as I talked about the importance of prioritization earlier, I think one of the key issues that comes out is there's a very strong case to be made for mapping exercises that actually also help us understand not just what are the priorities in energy technologies for the country in relation to the national needs, but also the gaps in capacity and policy that are important to making sure that energy innovation happens in the right way. Again, to echo a point made earlier, it really is important to embed this notion of energy, clean energy innovation in national visions of socioeconomic development. It also not just gets you political buy-in, but also helps synergize your resources for energy innovation with resources for national economic, socioeconomic development. And lastly, I think that's a fairly obvious point, that the kinds of skills and funds needed to scale up technologies in hardware-heavy areas such as carbon capture and storage or hydrogen biofuels is very different from that in digital technologies. I think an important point here is, therefore, since digital technologies require less skills and capital in many ways, and many developing countries actually have been fairly good at this kind of story, especially in places like Kenya or India, I think it offers an opportunity to move forward in ways that are actually low cost and low skill requirements compared to some of the much more hardware heavy areas of energy innovation, such as, for example, hydrogen or nuclear. Last slide, please. So that was the previous slide, really was what can domestic policymakers take away from this compilation of case studies. But as I mentioned earlier, international partners can also play a critical role. In fact, not only can play, must play a critical role, because it really is, given their possible role in supporting clean energy innovation in such countries, I think their role becomes absolutely central. And of course, as we all know and mentioned earlier, you cannot really have a global clean energy transition without a clean energy transition in these countries. So it really is not just philanthropy, but it really is achieving a shared common goal. Again, I'm not, maybe for the benefit of time, not going to go through all of those, but I think I'll maybe highlight just a couple of points, which is the fact that there are different kinds of programs that can play a role in such collaborations, both bilateral, but also many multilateral or plurilateral agencies that can play a role. Clearly, IE has been playing a very important role. Mission Innovation is another example of a country that can play, entity that can play such a role in supporting these efforts. And I think I'll just leave it with the last point here, which is, I think therefore, it's really important. It's really important for all of these international initiatives, whether they're bilateral or multilateral or plurilateral, they must make sure that EMD priorities are part of their work programs. Very often, for example, in Mission Innovation, because it's a small group of countries that all are, in a sense, strong energy innovation economies, they're obviously focusing on their own common priorities, and that's not surprising. But entities like Mission Innovation can actually play a really important role in also promoting clean energy innovation in countries that are not their member countries, especially countries that actually can really benefit from this kind of support of different kinds from these kind of entities. I think I'll stop with that. There's lots more in the report, but I think for making sure that my other colleagues can also speak, I'll sign off here. Thank you very much.
Allow me to stop the slideshow. Thank you so much, Ambuj. And I mean, it's true. There is a great richness to the information in the report, and that's testament to the authors of all of the case studies themselves. I think you made some excellent points, especially in concluding about the way that we should take on board some of these lessons as the IEA in our work and how we talk about the scope of clean energy innovation and what's going to be important in this century. But what I've liked particularly about the report is how we have these high-level messages that we've just introduced ourselves, which can feel a little bit abstract in a way. But we also have the 11 case studies that are much more detailed in terms of the stories, the narratives, in some cases, the individuals in the country that have played a role in some of the success stories. So I'd now like to invite some of those authors who are on the call with us today to turn on their cameras, and we're going to ask some questions and introduce them to put a personal face on some of the matter in the report itself. So please do turn on your cameras. And I want to turn first to Maria Florencia Zabaloy, who wrote the case study on Argentina, and ask you, Maria, give us a little bit of an idea of what that Argentinian story is about. I know that Argentina has a great tradition of technology development in the nuclear sector. Why did you look at the areas you did look at, and what were some of those specific findings, please?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Simon. Well, basically, in Argentina, we decided to study nuclear energy and energy efficiency policies because they were two cases that are completely different, and the main finding that we conclude was that in the case on the nuclear energy policy, the long-term development of this sector foster innovation, and basically it was a consequence of the accumulation of capabilities, and that was mainly financed and promoted by the government. In contrast, in the energy efficiency sector, we followed a more fragmented path, and that was characterized by the lack of continuity, lack of institutional support, among other factors. So one thing that I wanted to point out, which is really interesting, is that when we wrote the chapter, the main impression was that in the near future, the nuclear energy technologies would have a greater chance to develop compared to energy efficiency. However, today, at the moment, that reality has changed completely because the government changed and they are implementing a different approach. They are implementing measures at this moment that are actually changing this conclusion. Mainly, the two main measures that are important for these case studies is, on one hand, the reduction of funding for this scientific and technological system, which historically and today as well depends heavily on public funds. And the other one is the liberalization of the energy sector. For example, the update of energy tariffs, the reductions of restrictions for imported appliances, and so on. So these recent changes basically mean that today the expectation or the forecast is that actually investment in energy efficiency is beginning to show more chances of success compared to the nuclear energy developments. So we thought with the team that was an interesting thing to mention today, as you can see how we are always changing and not always for the better in Argentina. So this allows us to reach a more general conclusion that was one of the topics that we were asked to discuss, which is the engagement with clean energy. So in Argentina, the engagement with clean energy is basically unstable. We do have certain engagement, but it's constantly changing according to the political agenda, which sometimes goes from one extreme to the other. So this hinders the possibility of developing a long-term vision or plan. So that's the main challenge for Argentina. And for example, another thing that's important today, and it's the main agenda in the energy sector today in Argentina, is the promotion of natural gas. The government is trying to promote that sector because they are aiming to export liquefied natural gas and gain income through that activity. The question that remains is whether that income would be relocated to green energy investments and green energy technology. So that's mostly the same question. How can Argentina be a supplier of green energy technology by year 2030? Thank you.
Wow, thank you, and thank you also for the input to the report. It's an interesting point that Ambuj made earlier about institutional history being important, but certainly through working on both the Argentinian and the Brazilian case studies over the last few years with you, and it's very clear that in many of these countries we have a much higher volatility of kind of political outlooks than in some of the advanced economies. And this has a major impact on the aspects that we talked about earlier in terms of long-term planning and also the ability to capitalize on the incremental progress and the inflow of capital as well. So it's a very interesting outlook for Argentina at the moment, but I don't think that it's unique to Argentina. I think there are some learnings from the other countries here as well. Now, thank you for keeping your answer crisp and short as well, because we hope to get through all of the authors to share some insights. So thanks so much for that. And I'm going to ask if Sukaina Bududu is on the line to speak from Morocco. Now, Sukaina is at IRISEN, which is the Moroccan government's Institute for Renewable Energy Research. And in Morocco, the case study focused a lot on institutional design, and I think IRISEN has been a real success story and a really interesting case of institutional design for innovation. So Sukaina, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that in the next few minutes.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Simon, for this initiative. So it's an honor for me today to represent Morocco and share insights in how our country is actively contributing in the global clean energy transition. So it's committing to achieve 52% of its energy mix from renewable energy sources by 2030, as is outlined in the NDC. And two key institutions underpin this vision are MAZEN, which is Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy, which oversees large-scale solar and wind energy projects, including the Noor Ouarzazate Solar Complex, the world's largest solar power plants And IRSN, which is the Research Institute for Solar Energy and New Energies, which is created under the aegis of the Moroccan Ministry Energy Transition, which is the forefront of innovation and research in renewable energy and green technologies. So how IRSN is a catalyst for innovation in the Moroccan context. IRSN focused on applied research and technological innovation and addresses the country's energy challenges while fostering economic development because IRSN was created to support Moroccan energy transition and to support Moroccan energy strategy through R&D. So the key contribution of IRSN include the development of unique facilities such as the R&D platform or green R&D platform, such as the Green Energy Park, a world-class research and testing center located in Ben Guerir. So this platform enables testing of solar technologies, energy storage system, and innovative solution tailored to local condition. Also, in Ben Guerir, we have the Green and Smart Building Park, which is a R&D platform related to green mobility and sustainable mobility, smart grid, and green building. Also, we have the funding agency of IRSN that fund collaborative R&D collaborative projects between universities and businesses and local industry. So through this collaboration with these universities, businesses, and industry players, IRSN has advanced the development of technologies adapted to Moroccan context. This initiative reduces reliance on imported technologies and promote local industrialization and Moroccan industry decarbonation also. In the field of the green hydrogen, so IRSN is a key player in Morocco national green hydrogen strategy that IRSN developed with other partners, the Moroccan R&D or the Moroccan green hydrogen roadmap. So the institute works on projects aimed at producing low-cost green hydrogen, which position the country as a competitive technologies and exporter of this critical energy vector for the future. So for this initiative, has significantly contributed to Morocco clean energy transition. So we have the public-private partnership facilitated by IRSN have supported the growth of the local industry around the renewable energy, particularly in solar and storage technologies. Also, by collaborating with universities and supporting doctoral master's program, IRSN has helped train a new generation of clean energy experts. Morocco also through IRSN or through our institutes has become a model of African for African and another emerging economies, demonstrating how well-defined strategies can turn climate ambition into economic opportunities. So despite these achievements, of course, challenges persist, such as securing financing of large-scale projects and further strengthening local capabilities. With our advanced infrastructure and global partnerships and expertise, IRSN is well positioned to overcome this obstacle and continue driving Morocco energy transition. So this case study, we can say that this or IRSN case study not only advances our country objective, but also inspires other nations to invest in similar pathways, reinforcing global cooperation for a sustainable energy future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukaina. And I should mention that Morocco is not only an association country of the IEA, but also a member of Mission Innovation, and international cooperation was a theme in this case study. And I think it's also a case study. You mentioned the word investment, but it is a case study about investment early in some of the capacities and the expertise before actually many of these opportunities began to emerge in, some of the areas where Morocco is now receiving investment in batteries, in solar PV and in hydrogen as well. So there's this sort of, it's a story about anticipation, I think, of what was coming up and an early investment in the institutional capacity. And there are some sort of institutional similarities, I think, or sort of the importance of institutions in the case study that we looked at with Kenya. And I'm going to invite Vincent to talk a little bit about that. Vincent Ogaya is part of the Kenyan Climate Innovation Center, which is a dedicated institution in Kenya for looking at climate-related innovations. Another African country, another strong focus on solar PV. But I think, Vincent, maybe you'll tell us a little bit about the case study and, again, the importance of institutions that can interact internationally and cooperate. Thank you for your 3-minute intervention, if you may.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. I just want to start by saying that our case study focused on solar, on access to solar technologies within underserved regions in Kenya. But then there was the other one on geothermal. For the sake of this discussion, let me focus on the solar one. And to start from what Ambuj had mentioned earlier in regard to the already established context within a country, we are currently guided in terms of economic development by Vision 2030 economic blueprint, which speaks big on industrialization, transitioning economy, which is currently ranked in the lower middle income category. And so energy, with industrialization, then energy becomes a big enabler. Also within our innovation context, and also access to fintech that played a big role. So when we talk about this particular project, which is called the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Project, enabled by international financing, particularly by the World Bank. And at a time that Kenya also is a big driver on climate transition, not just within but also globally. So that then enabled the approach of targeting access to clean energy. And so the World Bank, which then provided the initial funding, SNV, Netherlands Development Organization, which acts as the fund manager for the results-based financing component of the program. But then the right policy context also in terms of tax exemptions for solar technologies within that particular period that was there for a period between 2014 to 2021. And then this project was started around 2018 when those tax exemptions were in place. And so the context is that about 72% of the country's landmass, which is occupied by about 20% of the population, still lag behind in terms of access to electricity, access to clean energy, while the rest of the country just doing fairly well. But these regions, because of how expansive they are, connecting them to the national grid then becomes a big challenge. And so this is how the off-grid solar access project came into place and looked at issues around access to solar home systems, off-grid within communities that also power community facilities. And then there's also the mix of technology, innovative technology, but also innovative business models that then played a big role. We have SMEs playing a big role in terms of making the technology reach the places where they deserve. And of course, through the results-based financing facility that I mentioned that is managed by SNV, then they are able to get access to these technologies at concessionary terms and make them be available to the communities where they are. But also, the other big lesson here is on our fintech context as a country, where digital, particularly mobile money technology, plays a big role. And so this also has enabled communities to be able to make payments easily. In Kenya, mobile money is a big component of our economy. Almost everything is paid by mobile money, and that makes it easy. So then these communities are able to access and are able to pay for the services. But again, another key lesson here is on the coordination of the different energy institutions within government. So we have the Ministry of Energy, which is solely in charge of policy and coordination, but also other energy institutions like the Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation, coordinating rural electrification, but also renewable energy access. As I mentioned, these are projects that basically targets a component of the country that is largely rural. Then, of course, we have other institutions like Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, basically playing a big role, particularly with regard to the mini grids in terms of transmission regulation. There is a regulatory authority as well. Then we have our utility, which is Kenya Power. So it's a sort of project that also came at a time when Kenya was actually redoing its energy policy and a new law on energy. So they almost came at the same time, although the project came initially, but it is said that it had a bigger role in terms of influencing some of the components of the new policy and the new law, particularly with regard to access to clean energy. So as it is, there are certain components that are still going on, like the mini grid component, which the government hopes to have installed about 120 mini grids by the end of next year. So that is basically to enable and to widen access to electricity within the country, clean energy, which is actually a big conversation, because already 93% of our installed capacity is clean, but also in terms of population, 73% have access to electricity. So this component of the country is now what brought in this particular project, and with it, a very big influence in our policy context. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I was paying close attention to whether the trees were moving behind you to see if that was a fake background, but actually you are joining us from outdoors. So we're all very envious of that, sitting here in winter in Paris. No, but I mean, you talked a little bit about the institutional importance there, as Sukaina did, about having dedicated institutions that are responsible for delivering some of these objectives. But in Kenya's case, the really interesting thing was how creating not a huge market, but a reliable market for some of these technologies for access, particularly solar home systems, created startups, entrepreneurs, and new ways of doing things. Kenya is not a major PV manufacturer now, but it has some of the most interesting and advanced business models for deploying PV, and also for adapting the hardware and for making it available. So it was really interesting to work with you. Thank you so much. We're going to stay in Africa now, because I'd like to move to Vivian Ogechi Nwadiaru, who is joining us today to talk a little bit about the Nigerian case study, where we have another example of a country that's struggling with meeting some of the basic demands for energy of the population, but also attracting investment. And there is investment now happening in Nigeria around manufacturing of some of these technologies. So tell us a little bit about the role of planning and other things, Vivian. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So in discussing Nigeria's case study, you'd, as Simon has mentioned, you'd sort of hear a little bit about the investment or the role of international cooperation and private financing, but also institutional development and institutional capacity building also, and the interplay between Nigeria's already budding or existing oil and gas industry, and how some innovations around that are or initiatives from these companies have also supported clean energy innovation development across the country. And so our case study really highlights the interplay between the integration of solar PV into rural electrification, and it illustrates Nigeria's engagement with both local energy needs and global sustainability goals. And like central to this effort is the role of our Rural Electrification Agency, which sort of spearheads the development of solar PV systems, while the priority for the deployment of these solar energy systems is rural electrification. The deployment strategy has sort of like created a spillover across like other underserved areas, right? To be able to support the 40% of the country that still is without access to electricity. And so like the catalytic role of our 2016 rural electrification strategy, which has now birthed new policies like the Sustainable Energy Transition Plan, in driving solar adoption, it kind of has prioritized solar for mini grids and off-grid solutions, recognizing that it is the most cost-effective solution to expand energy access, but also the limitation of our existing transmission and distribution grid. And so in spearheading this program, like their key underlying themes or key initiatives such as the Energizing Education Program, which has paired like solar installation with technical training across universities and also like fosters workforce development and inclusion. That's something that hasn't really come up in our conversations, that there's also the gender role that clean energy innovations will play. And so like despite the successes that we've seen with solar PV deployment in Nigeria, there's a lot of heavy reliance on international financing and technical support, which underscores like our limited domestic manufacturing and innovation capacity, not only in this sector, but also in other sectors. And like while the RECIP, which is a rural education strategy and plan, has created like a favorable environment, local production of solar components still remains insufficient to meet our growing demand. And but however, there are like key initiatives also in this space that show a sign of hope or a sign of progress. And one of those would be like the Oxano Solar, which is located in a Lagos-based energy startup that has emerged as a key player in Nigeria's energy landscape and operates one of the few solar assembly plants in the country. And then the other key milestone, which was achieved like in 2023, was a partnership between Nigeria's National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure, NASENI, and the China's Great Wall Industry Corporation, where they broke ground on a solar manufacturing plant, which is expected to have like a vertically integrated supply chain and an annual production of about 1,000 tons of polysilicon. And it's also interesting to note that this manufacturing plant is located in a state where there is an abundance of silicon. So there's that interplay of also geographical resource availability that would support clean energy technology manufacturing in the country. So, and once fully operational, it's expected to be one of the largest on the continent. So furthermore, Nigeria has been like identified by the African Renewable Energy Manufacturing Initiative to have medium or high feasibility to localize solar PV manufacturing. So you see manufacturing being a key theme, which would tie in innovation, but also private sector funding and financing and kind of stimulate growth in this space. So despite all of these interplaying factors, we continue to also see the role of international cooperation in pilot demonstrations. So the commitment of like Olon, which I sort of mentioned, it's funded by the Shell Foundation, Shell, which has been in operation in Nigeria for a long time. We see the partnership between Allon and the U.S. African Development Foundation stimulating startup growth in Nigeria through the off-grid energy challenge. And so, like in sort of a summary or in a nutshell, we see Nigeria's solar innovation journey sort of illustrating this balance between addressing like an immediate need to improve access, right? Because we're still very far off from having 100% electrified population, but also laying the ground for like a sustainable clean energy future. And we see also like with an estimate of growing, an expected growth in the utility scale solar to like 10 gigawatts, we see that the transmission and distribution infrastructure will play a very key role in supporting some of this clean energy innovation. And so with that system being described as weak and Nigeria experiencing a lot of grid failures in the past, institutional development in grid and grid edge technology would also support the deployment of clean energy technology across the country. And so our case study really highlights the potential for PV, but also like the critical importance of like policy coherence, capacity building, especially in manufacturing, grid and grid edge technology and innovation to not only support Nigeria's resource adequacy, but also power a sustainable economy. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's been great to work with you, and thank you for sharing your insights just now with us. And Vivian, Nigeria is such a big country, and working with you, I've really been able to understand a little bit more about the opportunities and the challenges, and this sense that there is no sequence here from getting access to improving the grid and then maybe starting to do research and innovation in the future. Everything is very much bound up together, and you can stimulate good outcomes on the manufacturing and the innovation side at the same time as delivering access, and do that in a way that it actually brings greater economic benefit. But of course, in Nigeria, there has been a number of possible false starts and lessons around how to make sure that things are well aligned institutionally for these outcomes. So I recommend that to everybody. And as we were listening then to Vivian talking, I realized how late it is getting in China, and how lucky we are to have Fang Zhang on the line with us, who is an associate professor at Tsinghua University and contributed the case study on China, looking at ultra high voltage transmission and solar in quite a different institutional context, in quite a different context now in China, certainly in the last few years in terms of energy availability and technology. Fang, please take the next few minutes to tell us a little bit about what you found, and thanks for joining us today.
Okay. Hi, everyone. And Simon, thank you for being so flexible. And it's indeed a little bit late. So I would like to share right now, because I need to get up very early tomorrow morning. So first, I want to thank IEA and Ambush for giving me this opportunity to join this wonderful project. I'm so glad I can contribute the case study from China. In this study, we actually do a comparative analysis based on two clean energy technology cases from China. One is ultra high voltage technology, and the other one is solar PV technology. In the two sector, actually China catch it up as a latecomer in these technology fields, because at the first beginning, China actually had minimum knowledge in this field. And right now, actually China has become one of the major players in the two technology fields. And what makes these two cases special is also the two distinct policy-making process in the two technology sector. In the ultra high voltage technology field, we've actually observed a more technology policy making process that were advocated by state-owned enterprises. Where in the PV technology sector, there are more involvement from the private companies and the local governments. So we kind of track the whole policy making process and technology innovation in these two fields. And we think we get some very interesting key messages. I think the first one is, I think, a little bit different from what we might think about the clean energy policy making process in China. Is actually not a top-down making process, or there is actually the central government. The government can just do what they want. Actually, there is a very distinctive consensus building efforts in both technology fields. Actually, there are multiple stakeholders involved in several debates whether to develop this technology and what policy should adopt to develop this technology and to what scale this technology should be deployed and developed in China. So there are a lot of debate, I feel. I think a key message is even in China, which is I think the government have a more stronger power. This year need to have a lot of consensus building efforts to mobilize stakeholders, mobilize resource to support clean energy technology innovation. And the second message we find is interesting is that actually in both sectors, major technology advocates try to align these technologies with the grand national strategies in China so that they can gain more legitimacy and political support to support the clean energy technology development, especially in the early stage. For instance, in the ultra-high voltage technology, at the very beginning, the technology advocates had a lot of difficulties to proceed with the demonstration project and also with policy making process. I think a kind of a milestone stage is when the technology advocates try to align the new technologies with China's demands to mitigate air pollution. That gives them a lot of I think political power to break the to fight against the resistance from incumbent technology fields. So they get a kind of a lot of momentum to proceed. I think the third key, I think a unique lesson from China case is the state ownership actually has some advantage to promote clean energy technology innovation, especially when we compare the ultra-high voltage technology and the solar PV technology in China, even though China both have been very successful in these two technology fields. But we do observe that I think in the early stage, the state-owned enterprises, because they are actually backed by the government, they have more political legitimacy, especially in the China context. I think the technology advocates has more close relationship with the government, so they can more easily to start the conversation whether to develop this technology, how to develop this technology, so that can help to solve the I think kind of problems that related to the technology novelty in technology innovation. So I think this is a very important message that for developing countries, which have already often they are actually a lot of developing countries has a lot of state-owned enterprises. I think a kind of direct policy implication is that these countries should try to motivate and utilize the power of the financial resources or the political resources of these state-owned enterprises to participate in clean energy technology innovation. And the last key message is in terms of the policy instrument, we do observe that at the in both cases, at the very beginning, the government used more demand pull and the technology push policy to promote clean energy technology innovation. that's trying to use resources to help generate knowledge and also try to create the market for the early deployment of these technologies. But once these technologies has been demonstrated and has been deployed at a moderate scale, more effort needs to be to use social political policy instrument to mobilize a larger scale stakeholders to persuade the public to try to accept and adopt this new technology, these new clean energy technologies. So I think these are the key messages from the China study. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. And it really is worth repeating that what we learned from Fang's case study is a lot about how China is politically highly centralized. We know all of these things, but in terms of the two case studies, there are huge differences in the way that innovation was incentivized, supported, and the different types of institutions and actors that were involved. And because China has been a front runner in some ways in the last 2 decades in terms of developing many clean energy technologies within this context of high state participation, especially through state-owned enterprises. I think there are some interesting lessons here, and very interesting that you brought up the point about social and political legitimacy so strongly as a way to make sure that the technologies do get accepted and rolled out as smoothly as possible. And so in order to kind of keep a little bit of a similar theme here, I'd like to turn to Stella, who looked at the Kazakhstan case study, because Kazakhstan, again, has a high level of state ownership in the energy sector. And I think Stella will tell us about a slightly different path that Kazakhstan is going down with regard to the sovereign wealth fund there. Stella, please take up to 3 minutes to tell us about that. Sorry, we're coming up to time already.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to bring to you a very short summary of our chapter concluded and completed together with my co-authors, Stefanos Xenarios, Alias Embayeva, and Serik Oras-Galiyev. We focus in the case of Kazakhstan, a very hydrocarbon-rich country, very important in Central Asia for the region, but also for the world as a major hydrocarbon exporter. Now, in the case of Kazakhstan, we focus in the presence of the National Sovereign Wealth Fund, Samruk-Kazyna, which bears something very specific to the case of Kazakhstan, owns the industrial and commercial firms that account for about 40% of national GDP of Kazakhstan. And being one of the main actors that brings forward the very ambitious target set by the Kazakhstani government to decarbonize and modernize the economy by 2050. So in our chapter, we focus and we discuss in detail the unique position of Samruk-Kazyna to channel capital towards long-term socio-economic and environmental objectives. And what we basically argue in the chapter and we discuss is that in contrast to private investors that may face pressures to prioritize short-term returns over long-term value, Samruk-Kazyna portfolio is very well positioned that actually it has an intrinsic tie to climate change and enduring effects. So it has a self-interest beyond the national interest and social, environmental, and economic interest to diversify and to move towards a more carbon neutral path. So in our chapter, we discuss the main strategies brought forward by Kazakhstan to 2050 to decarbonize and how these strategies translate to particular actions and investment priorities for Samruk-Kazyna. To clarify here the role of Samruk-Kazyna, that is related first of all to being a large state entity that controls the largest state-owned companies in Kazakhstan, but also coming from a marriage between the sovereign wealth fund, the initial sovereign wealth fund of Kazakhstan, and also a development fund, Kazyna, the national fund, which focused on long-term investments for development purposes. Combining the big share that Samruk-Kazyna has for in the Kazakhstan economy, and also the very clear articulation of the long-term energy and decarbonization targets, one would expect to see a very clear investment priorities and path for the fund to bring forward projects that will speed up the decarbonization and the innovation process in the country. In contrast, what we see is that several of the R&D projects brought forward by Samruk-Kazyna relate directly to hydrocarbon technologies, showing somehow this path dependency for the Kazakhstan economy and policy making. So a lot of focus is put on coal enrichment and gasification, on technologies that have to do with carbon capture and sequestration, or the ability to use the nuclear potential, or to build capacities that relate somehow to hydrocarbons. One key finding from our work is this path dependence and this development of projects and strategies that, although bring forward the need to decarbonize, they evolve around traditional hydrocarbon based pathways. A second key finding of our analysis is this historic and continued reliance on not just the main source of income being hydrocarbons, but also on how decisions are made and how are executed. So what we see is that a continuity of the centralized decision making and an inability to create a strong institutional cooperation and exchange environment. So what we see is that there is now a good body of independent institutions and settings, governance settings that can support the decarbonization of the economy, like the Ministry of the Ecology, like departments that have to do with geology and natural resource management. Yet what we find is that there is low coordination between these different entities, and also very low understanding of what are the key targets that have to be met and by when. So while the targets are there, the monitoring and the evaluation comes ex post rather than ex ante. So we discuss this in detail, and we come with proposals that have to do with the establishment of systems to set the policy objectives, but also to monitor them in a good time. A key in our discussion is the centralization of the decision making that has to do with the prior experience and governance structures that have been a common practice, but that seem to still exist and to still lead the way of how decisions are taken and are executed in Kazakhstan. And this is good in a sense to coordinate action for targets that extend beyond the private interests, such as decarbonization, but seems to be very discouraging sometimes, especially when it has to do with greater engagement of the private sector and greater engagement and mobilization of private capital, of private initiatives. And the last thing that we discuss and we identify as a core obstacle in the case of Kazakhstan is the existing infrastructure and the ability of the existing infrastructure to support large-scale projects that have to do with decarbonization and promotion of renewable technologies and innovation that is related to clean technologies. So a key problem here is the absence or poor quality of the critical infrastructure that hinders clean energy innovation. And in this regard, what we discuss is the potential of the large institutional investor like Samruk-Kazyna, but also of private investors to look carefully into infrastructure upgrade in the country. As a conclusion to our chapter and as a key takeaway message, and actually as a teaser of what makes this chapter special, is to see what can be done in similar cases of other developing countries that have this advantage as Kazakhstan has to sit on accumulated assets coming from depletable resources and especially from hydrocarbons, and to utilize these accumulated assets to make the great leap forward for energy diversification and clean in innovation. And here the main obstacle seems to be the path dependency and the experience, the past experience that seems to drive somehow developments on one side. But on the other side, what we also discuss and we bring forward is the ability of these countries to build on these accumulated assets and to take advantage of the fact that they can now direct a very good chunk of accumulated capital to green innovation and clean technologies first, and in a way that can this time mobilize in an efficient way and in a timely way private capital. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stella. And Stella makes a very good case there for why, the case study is worth reading, and also why it probably holds interesting lessons for quite a wide range of emerging developing economies that are reliant on oil and gas and other hydrocarbon incomes. And I think there is a lesson here about the platform that has been created in Samruk Kazina, which is fascinating, even if there remains a number of challenges to be overcome for it to achieve its stated objectives in the area of innovation. And Stella's talking to us there from the National Capodocian University, Athens, but I think it's worth stressing that the project team, had some people from within these institutions in Kazakhstan providing us with the insights as well, which is a real strength. Now, I know that we've just run over time, and I am going to take the unilateral decision to say that we will not quite stop here, because we have two more interventions from authors, which I really want to get on record and to make sure people can listen to. So I hope that people can stay with us. We will get through them as quickly as possible before I hand back to Ambush. And so I apologize for the timekeeping today. But maybe I can just quickly hand over the floor now to Britta Renkamp from the University of Cape Town, who will tell us a slightly different story about the importance of just energy transitions in the policies around renewables innovation in South Africa. Britta, I apologize that we're running late, but please keep it as short as you can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, first, I'm aware of the time constraints. So welcome back to Africa. South Africa is a bit of an outlier when it comes to African climate and energy challenges. And South Africa actually contributes to most emissions on the continent. And I brought 4 artifacts to very quickly show you what this is about. So our issue is about coal. It's not oil. Gas may be coming, but really the story is about coal, and coal is where we locked in. It's different from the Latin American story, from Argentina, from Colombia, where a lot of the export is for coal. And a lot of the question is, as the Argentinian case study showed, about like repurposing royalties from coal export. A lot of the coal here is used in South Africa, and but for electricity, but also for the petrochemical industry, and there's a lot of vested interest in keeping coal. So that's the coal story. Next one, South Africa at 2024. This country is celebrating this year its democracy of 30 years, but it's also had its big elections, and it stood a very firm test to have the ANC, the ruling party, experiences big losses and to form a coalition government. So all of this is a big test for democracy, but it also shaped a lot of political change that is very much also coined by the energy transition. Next point, local manufacturing. This is a wind turbine that is the only local content I could find in South Africa, made of the beads, the African arts, about 12 years ago, which is also roughly when we hosted COP17. You may remember the first COP in Africa, which led the pathway to 3 main climate policy that we still have. So the one is in the case study. It's about the very long titled Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program. It's 4Ps. It's called REAP. And the REAP tried to localize manufacturing as a clean energy innovation policy, but also to create trust for community development. And it already talked a lot about climate justice. This is something that we find in the next case study that's in the chapter, which is about the last artifact I'm going to show you. So it's the just energy transition. And I brought this little solar queen. So she waves. She's got a panel here and she waves at you nicely. But she kind of represents the issue that we've got about green colonialism, green capitalism. What does the just energy transition actually mean? There's a lot of interest at the moment looking into South Africa and the Just Energy Transition Partnership that is put together. It's a very visible climate finance facility, and it's already attracted a lot of pledges from a group of partners, including the World Bank, the US, Germany, France, the UK, Spain and Denmark. And then there's also now the BRICS group, the New Development Bank has pledged to contribute to it. So it's quite a visible spot to watch. But now the outcome is still very unclear. So we don't know, are we going to end up with green hydrogen just for export? Or what are the actual benefits for the just transition for local people? And it is a country which has basically still, you see a lot of the labor system, the local reality is still shaped by the legacies of mining, and that's why the energy transition goes way beyond the energy sector. It's really a matter of social justice. And that's why it's quite an interesting, compelling story. I think you can check out this chapter, but then I think Simon has also contributed a lot to bring that story up to date, and I'm going to leave it here because we're out of time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Britta, and sorry for the curtailed time. I echo what Britta said about the way that we work together to tell this story, because it's really fascinating about what's happening in South Africa. It has very big ambitions. It is going to be hosting the G20 next year, and looking in some detail at energy technology opportunities. But as we work with other countries around the world now, I think we will also be pointing them towards what South Africa did to integrate some of these equity elements into the innovation policies and how contracts are awarded and other things, and there are some lessons to be learned there. But let's keep going. In the last case study that we're going to be able to touch on today is Colombia, and we should have Clara with us, who looked at looked at the situation in Colombia. Again, a country with very significant ambitions around energy technology, especially in some of the areas like hydrogen, and a legacy of technological competence from the oil and gas sector. Clara, please tell us, why did you focus on the areas you did, and what were the few key findings from the case study? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Simon, for the invitation for this project. Colombia have developed a set of strategies to promote energy transition, promoting especially renewable energy and potential application of hydrogen, what is analyzed in the case study. To develop innovation process is very important to develop and implement clean energy technologies. For this reason, Colombia have developed different strategies with public and private sectors that include research institutes, universities, and companies. The idea with these sectors is to define possibilities to buy, design, and adapt new clean technologies in energy sectors. With the aim, Colombia have developed different public policy instruments as auctions, developed of technological pilots, or maybe to increase the resource to research and development, and also to with international cooperation, especially with Germany and other countries, to develop different strategies, especially to promote hydrogen and renewable energy. What is the aim for the Colombian policy is basically a diversification of energy matrix to reduce greenhouse emissions, adaptation and mitigation facing climate change, and guarantee energy security. For this reason, Colombia has ambition energy transition to achieve and to improve energy system in the country. The main findings of the study are the following. Colombia wishes to participate in clean energy transition to address its changing socioeconomic challenges. However, Colombia is building its clean energy ecosystem from a relative weak basis and will need to carefully channel resources to achieve its ambitious goals, because with transformation energy system implies more resources, especially human and money, and is necessary to improve these capabilities. As results, renewables deployment policies in the last decade addressed social issues related to non-grid connected communities, but were not accompanied by major innovation programs for long-term prosperity. The deployment of solar and wind energy in Colombia has generated new markets complementary with innovation, and the idea is to increase also the hydrogen market with innovation and production of new technologies, especially with pilots developed by Ecopetrol. This is the more highest company of oil in Colombia, and this pilot is finalized maybe in 2030. Colombia has many of the ingredients to attract investment in hydrogen and renewable projects and capitalize on the related technologies opportunities through research, development, and innovation. Colombia has good potential to implement clean energy technologies with the energy system, and also to promote effective energy transition with technologies and decrease greenhouse emissions, and also innovative in policy instruments. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Well, thank you for keeping that so short and concise. But please, I encourage people to read the full case study, because it touches on a number of things that Ambuj was talking about earlier. In fact, it covers a number of things that are themes that have run throughout these interventions. Colombia is starting from a relatively weak base in terms of some of these technologies, but it has the legacy institutions, it has state-owned enterprise, or the role of Ecopetrol, and some really interesting and impressive projects that are already underway in the country, and that I didn't know about before we started working on the project. So thank you, Clara, for sharing those with us. So that we can wrap up, I'm going to thank all of the speakers. It's been great. I hope everybody's appreciated the color that those have added to the webinar, and also the fact that we're really proud that we put together a team of experts from around the world. We didn't mention Clara is from the Universidad del Rosario in Colombia, and we've had people from government and academia and think tanks working on the project. So that's been really good. Ambuj, let me hand back over to you, because you're going to say another couple of words before passing it on for closing remarks. Apologies for keeping everybody late today, but thanks a lot for attending on behalf of the IEA.
Thanks, Simon. I really don't have much to add after that amazing set of remarks from our authors that highlighted the point that I'd made earlier, that even though we talked about the fact that there were some key findings that were common to many of the case studies, and maybe the most important finding, as the remarks have illustrated, that the clean energy innovation agenda has really risen up the policy agenda in these countries. I think what the remarks really highlighted is the diversity of experiences in these countries, the priorities, how they've organized themselves to engage with these priorities, and really, I think the richness of these cases, hopefully, or at least in the brief time provided, I hope has given all of the audience further motivation to dig much deeper into the volume and actually really make use of the wealth of information here. Really, many different ways to advance clean energy innovation. And I think what you saw here is really a start of a journey for many of these countries. And there's obviously a long way to go, but hopefully domestic policymakers in these countries, other actors in these countries, along with international actors, will be able to advance this clean energy agenda, and hopefully our volume has contributed to that. With that, I will stop. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you, obviously, to the authors. Thanks.
Okay, and the last person that we will hear from today is Peter Horvath from the European Commission's Directorate General for Energy. The European Commission was kind enough to help the IEA's contribution financially, and I think Peter would like to share a few words on how this fits into their overall work, and perhaps how we might continue on this theme in the future. So over to you, Peter. I'd like to just also apologize to people. We didn't get to the questions that people put into the Q&A, but happy for people to contact us and to follow up where possible. Thank you very much. Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much, Simon, and many thanks to all the speakers. And actually, we are really proud to having been supporting this project and this activity under the Clean Energy Transitions Program of the IEA, because the knowledge that you mobilized and the experts you brought together in this framework, in these activities, is really impressive. And it also demonstrates what in your other product, the energy technology perspective, you demonstrated that how global actually clean energy markets are and clean energy supply chains are. They are reaching really everywhere in the globe, and there is for anyone and everyone a stake there, an opportunity there. And innovation policy is about how to grasp those opportunities, and we have seen really good examples there. And from our experience in promoting international cooperation on research and innovation, I would just highlight, reflecting what we have heard here, just two aspects. That usually the projects that we support, they are good at replying to immediate needs and provide opportunities for hands-on experience in the countries where we are engaging. On the other hand, without a long-term vision, as Vivian from Nigeria highlighted, without a long-term vision from the governmental partners, it is very difficult to make them sustainable, these efforts, these project-level efforts. You really have to mobilize the governments, and as Fang Chang from China said, the state-owned enterprises, to make the change systemic and sustainable. Just to give one example, somewhere in a hospital, we created a local off-grid solar energy system, which was very, very useful for the hospital. But as soon as the project ended, despite the benefits, it was really difficult to maintain. And it was not only the question of money, but of the expertise, the knowledge to maintain those systems in place. So we have to make these changes, sustainable and systemic, so that everyone can really benefit. And there, indeed, innovation policy is key, because innovation policy helps to domesticate basically clean energy in various geographies and regions. So that would be maybe my main takeaway and message at the very end. And thank you all, and thank you, Simon, and all the contributors for this excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us right until the end, and also for giving that important message about policy durability, sustainability. What we've learned is that there's no silver bullets. This isn't an easy area of policy making, but there are tremendous opportunities, and there are some ways to make it much more effective by learning from one another across these countries. I think we have a lot more interesting conversations to come on this topic. Thank you to all of our speakers, and also to Ajay, to Rosalinda, and to Timo at the very beginning. We'll close this webinar here, but we hope to hear from you all and to see you all again soon. Thank you very much.